Hey everyone, Ben here from JRP. Today we've got another build feature. We're going to feature this 2016 Toyota 4Runner Limited.
Perfect.
Essentially, customer has the stock car, did a bunch of aesthetic mods, as you can see a little bit here, you'll see in the B-roll. But essentially, he's just met the limits of what the stock vehicle can do. He's actually off-roading, so no mall crawler here, which I do definitely appreciate. You're seeing a lot of limitations as far as traction, grip, articulation, everything like that on the trail, which you certainly want better suspension, better parts just to be able to handle that. So we've got a slew of new parts that we're going to throw on to help it perform better on the street as well as on the trail, but more importantly, be more comfortable, last longer, and just look badass because you're lifting it a little bit and, you know, the chicks love it. So let's see what we've got here and talk a little bit about it. Basically, we went to Bilstein. A lot of great companies out there in the off-road zone, but Bilstein is one of the best. You look at everything from just slightly lifted street trucks all the way to full-on Baja trophy trucks. You'll see Bilstein everywhere. We're doing their top of the range for their bolt-on applications. So not quite the trophy truck stuff, but it's got a lot of trophy truck tech, which is quite neat. Front end, we're starting out with the Bilstein 8112 zone controls. These are really trick. It works very similar to, say, like a Fox Live valve. Fox Live valve is electronic, so it's position sensitive, and then it will use sensors to see where it is in its shock shaft stroke, and then basically will decide what to do with the damping. Bilstein does more of a passive rather than active, but it works very much the same, which is quite cool. It's a lot less intricate and probably a lot more reliable. What the Bilsteins have is a position sensitive valving. So essentially on the street, it's going to stay somewhat stiff and it's going to allow the vehicle to handle better, ride better as well. But then as you start to dive in to that shock shaft travel, basically it's going to open up and it's going to bypass a little bit more fluid to allow it to soak up those big bumps. So if you're going down a trail, a road, whatever, there's a big bump, even though the vehicle feels very planted and very controlled, you would think you're going to have a big harsh bump when you hit that sharp edge. What the position sensitive valving does is it opens the high speed rebound up and just allows the car to really soak it up. And then when it settles back into the lower shaft travel settings, it's going to go back to that street setting. They're height adjustable from 1.5 inch lift up to 3-inch lift, but that's within the range of the stock upper arms. But if you're going to be lifting all the way to 3 inches in the front like we are, it is highly recommended to do aftermarket upper control arms, which we have right here from Bilstein. So Bilstein uses high quality steel tubular chromoly upper arm. They use a polyurethane bushing for the arm, as well as higher range of motion for the upper ball joint, so that when you're lifting past what the factory is allowed, essentially you're going to have more range there, so you're not topping out the ball joint like you would be on the factory one. The front suspension, the 8112s, also come with an external reservoir, which is really nice. It's just additional fluid just to keep the shock fluid cool, and as shock fluid warms up, you'll actually start to lose a little bit of viscosity in the fluid, which means the shocks start to actually get softer and will blow through the travel much easier. So having the extra bit of fluid in the reservoirs makes sure everything stays cool and you have more consistent performance. For the rears, we're doing the Bilstein 8100s, which again are really trick, very trophy truck looking. You could actually see the external bypasses here, as well as the external reservoir. So again, more shock fluid just means you get more cooling, but then also too, these ones are adjustable. So the fronts adjust themselves more or less, as I explained, whereas the rears, you actually have a rebound and a compression adjuster, which is really trick, just because especially if you have a lot of weight in the rear versus no weight in the rear, it just allows you to fine tune that and really get the ride quality and handling buttoned down on it. Both the front and the rear of the 8100 series have a much larger than stock shock shaft, so that means a lot more rigidity, but then also too just better performance on trail. All right, for the rear, we went with the Bilstein B12 upgraded springs. So these will give an 1.5 inch lift in the rear. The customer actually decided to provide us with some spacers to lift it 3 inch in the rear. But more importantly, the thing to note with these rear springs is that Bilstein has a stock weight of 400 pound and a 700 pound over factory. So essentially what that means is that if you're loading the vehicle up like this, that you're gonna have a lot more weight on the vehicle. So if you're doing a stock spring, it will be good on the street, but on the trail, you may find that you're blowing through the travel. So essentially, we're going with the 400 pound because it's relatively limited, the amount of stuff that's going on this vehicle, but it is still additional weight. The 700 pound would be more for the guys who are throwing an entire set of wheels or something very heavy on the top or the back of the vehicle. So for this application, we did go with the 400s, and it's going to suit exactly what the customer is doing. Then you see everything back here. So you've got all your bushings, your clamps, your mounts for the external reservoirs, and basically everything needed to install the suspension properly. So Bilstein definitely goes through the R&D to make sure that everything is done properly, and that it's going to be easy to access for maintenance or just cleaning it as well. Let's take a look, see what else we've got. We've definitely got some more stuff. Excited to get the stuff on the vehicle. Got the 8100 rear shocks in, so everything's all mounted up. Rear canisters are mounted. We've also done the rear springs as well as the Super Pro, or some of the Super Pro. So we've done the Super Pro adjustable rear sway bar, the adjustable rear end links, as well as the panhard bushings and some other goodies back here. A lot of people, especially off-roaders, are going to wonder why we did a rear sway bar. Realistically, this is going to be a street vehicle, so it's nice to have the sway bar, especially once the vehicle's lifted up. If you want to go off-road and get some of that extra articulation, then just disconnect the sway bars and you're good to go. But realistically, this is going to be a weekend warrior, so majority of the time it is going to be on the street. So the sway bar is definitely going to be helpful there. With the Super Pro urethane bushings, a lot of people don't actually know this about urethane bushings, but the really cool thing is they're not preloaded like a OEM style or a rubber bushing. So it means you can just install it and you don't have to worry about preloading anything. And also it allows just for more articulation and for it to rotate a lot easier without binding up or without extra preload being added by being lifted or being lowered. So that's just a really nice thing. And being harder, it's going to have less deflection and it's just going to last longer as well. So that's really nice. So you can see here the adjustable Super Pro sway bar. So you have 3 positions that it's in. It's in its softest right now, which is going to give the least amount of stiffness, but still going to be stiffer than stock. Then you have your adjustable end link, which the adjustable end link is really helpful, especially when lifting the vehicle, because then you're going to be able to make sure that the sway bar blades are nice and parallel when the vehicle's at its ride height. But when you compare it to what we have from the OEM here, it's pretty weak. Pretty weak sauce. No adjustable or no adjustment at all in the sway bar or in the end links at all. So definitely having that extra stiffness is just going to give it a little bit more control, body control on the street, but then also too just going to last longer and looks cool too, right? So yeah. We got the front end of this thing all buttoned up now. We've got the suspension in. You can see we've got the remote canister mounted up. We've done sway bar end links adjustable here. We've also done the Super Pro lower control arm bushings. We've also done the Bilstein upper control arm. So essentially what all this is going to do is allowing you to lift the vehicle, but then allowing you to compensate for everything as well, because as you lift, driveline and all that kind of stuff gets thrown out of whack. So those Super Pro bushings, like I mentioned before, the polyurethane, it doesn't preload like rubber. So as you have it at its extremes, it's not going to bind up like rubber would. What you can't see under this skid plate is we did a Super Pro spacer for the front diff. So what that does is it just drops the diff ever so slightly, give the drive line a little bit of a break, and just ease the angles of the axles, because anytime that you do lift, you're putting a lot of stress on your CV joints and everything. So you want to make sure to correct that as much as possible. And there's also a front sway bar spacer kit, which basically just allows you to drop the sway bar to take a little bit of the preload out of it. Again, just because you're raising the vehicle, just to put everything back into spec, so you don't have to worry about clunking or putting too much stress on anything. This already has an air-aid snorkel on it, paired with the TRD intake. So that is increasing the flow in. We need to increase the flow going out now. So we're gonna do an MBRP exhaust, increase sound a little bit, maybe increase power a bit. So yeah, let's check that out.
This is the big boy right here. This is a 304 stainless with a single exit to the rear. It's gonna be a beaut. Without further ado, let's take a look at this exhaust. Bam, look at that. Just like we can rely on with the good old MBRP 304 stainless, this stuff is lifetime warranted. This machine is gonna be going in through rivers. It's gonna be driven in the winter. It's gonna be used the whole time in our vicious Canadian weather. And so, MBRP 304 stainless is what you want. And last but not least, we got our MBRP muffler here. Boom. You also get all your clamps with this. As per usual, MBRP gives you everything you need to install this exhaust at home.
So those of you who've spent all your hard-earned money on your rigs and your vehicles, the first thing you want to do is protect yourself. So yeah, we have insurance, stuff like that, but sometimes, especially things like this, you may be overlanding in the middle of nowhere. You definitely want to make sure you've got yourself covered. We're going to add this Element E50 fire extinguisher. They're about the size of a flare, but it's a chemical process. It's not actually charged, so they don't go bad, which is quite nice. They're also not acidic, so when you do use it, it doesn't etch your paint and it doesn't stick to everything. It doesn't destroy everything. Your big 5-pounders, which is the most common, those have about, say, between 15 and 20 seconds at most worth of extinguisher in it. This has 50 seconds. There's mounts that you can have to mount it to the seat. There's actually an overlanding external mount, which we can actually mount to the roof rack here. So quick, easy access. It's out of the way, but it's very easy to get to quickly if something does go wrong. So essentially how this works, this mounts wherever you're gonna put it. Unzip, pull it out, ditch. You have a cap. So here you see a striker. Pull the cap off the bottom. It's another striker, just like a match or a flare. This portion is metal, so you don't want to hit this because it is a chemical process. It gets very hot. So there's a plastic handle to hold on to, and you literally strike it like a match and point it towards your area that you want to extinguish. This is going to be great for any small fires or fires that have started. If you have a large fire, like a fuel fire or a tire fire, it may buy you some time. It's not going to do much, but it's just like in a race car where you have a full fire suppression system. It's only going to do so much. It's more or less just to guarantee your safety, or at least to aid in that. These things are pretty cool. You see them all over the place in motorsports, everywhere else, like I mentioned. So definitely a very worthwhile upgrade, and not even necessarily upgrade, just insurance. All right, and last but certainly not least, doing a sprint booster. A lot of people talk about just lack of throttle control and just how dead the pedal feels in a lot of modern cars nowadays. So the Sprint Booster is actually the first to the market. There's been a lot of copies since, but no one's quite replicated what Sprint Booster's been able to do. But essentially this just allows you to fine tune your throttle input. So especially on trail, sometimes if you're on a really slippery rock or anything like that, you want to dumb down the aggressiveness of the pedal just so you're not going to be spinning your tires. Other times you want a 1-to-1 ratio just so that you can judge how much power you're putting down. And then on the street or anything like that, maybe you want even a little bit more aggressive throttle mapping. So this just gives you the ability to do all of that. Other neat things that it offers, which is actually an anti-theft mode, which I'm not sure if you keep eye on the news in Canada, but vehicles are getting stolen quite a bit lately. So essentially this allows you to input a code, and even if someone can get into the vehicle and get it started without your 3-digit code, that pedal does nothing. So they're just gonna take off and go steal someone else's 4Runner. Then the other thing is valet mode. So if you have a friend or family, someone you just don't necessarily trust with the vehicle, you have modes between 25, 50, and 75% power that, again, with a 3-digit code, you can put in, and even if they're driving around pedal to the metal, they're not going to get more power than what you allow them to. So this is just a great addition. Just allows a little bit of a layer of tunability and drivability as well. All right, so here we are. It's been a couple of months since we put the final touches on this thing, and it's been great. The owner has taken it off-roading, taken it camping, done lots of street driving, and just enjoying the vehicle the way that it was designed to be enjoyed, but also too not being held back by the limitations of the stock vehicle. But everything's been great. The upgrade in the power and the response from the Sprint Booster really makes it feel just more agile and more ready to go, especially with you can see the new wheels and tires. Those were added since we did the suspension. And definitely with a big wheel and tire, you do feel a little bit of laziness and you do feel the weight. But the addition to the Sprint Booster allows you to fine tune that throttle response and kind of pick up what you lost. For what it is, it's pretty good on the street. The suspension is amazing. Off-road is where it's a different animal. It's phenomenal, rides great. Body control is phenomenal. You can unhook the sway bar for when you want to go off-road, get that extra articulation, and it's just been a great package. So if you're looking for something like this, definitely this is a great route to go down. It just depends on the budget and what your ultimate goal is for your rig. If you like seeing stuff like this, make sure to comment down below. Let us know what you want to see or what you're working on, anything like that. And make sure to like and subscribe, it helps us quite a bit. And we'll make sure to keep pumping out cool content like this. All right, guys, see you later.